IIHS has new crash test ratings out for 4 large pickups in our 2 newest crash test configurations. Here to talk us through the results is Joe Nolan, our Senior Vice President for Vehicle Research. Before we dive in, I just wanted to take a moment to remind you that if you love watching crash tests, you should definitely subscribe to our channel so you never miss a crash test. Joe, speaking of tests, we're going to talk through some of these ratings. We evaluated these 4 pickups in our updated side crash test as well as our updated moderate overlap crash test. Let's talk about the side test first. How did the 4 vehicles perform in that test?
So 3 of the 4 earned our highest rating of good. 1 of them earned an acceptable. That's the Chevy Silverado, because the torso measures for the rear-seated occupant were pretty high and presents a risk of injury.
Let's talk about the test really quick. We recently updated it, right? What are the changes we implemented?
Right, so the original test was a 1,500 kilogram striking barrier moving at 50 kilometers per hour in a T-bone style crash.
So that's about 31 miles per hour, about 3,300 pounds, okay?
Correct. And we've upgraded that to 1,900 kilogram barrier striking at 60 kilometers per hour. And we did that because the field accident data showed that the crashes that were still injuring and killing people, even in good rated vehicles, were much higher speed, and the vehicles getting heavier in the fleet the barrier had to be made heavier as well.
Right, so it's a 37 mile per hour test with a 4,200 pound barrier, right?
Good translation.
Yeah, so let's talk about the one acceptable performer, the Silverado. You mentioned that it had a downgrade to the rear dummy. The front seat dummy, though, looked good.
The front seat dummy looked great. And the rear seat dummy, the only significant downgrade is we measure the amount of deflection, we call it. It's the amount that the ribs get pushed in by the intruding structure of the vehicle. And the amount of deflection recorded was high enough to downgrade that part of the body for the rear occupant.
And there were 3 trucks that performed well with good ratings. One of them is the F-150 right here, right?
That's correct. And the F-150 did really well. It does have a minor ding against it in its area of structure. They got an acceptable rating there. You can see that the door sill pushed in. It's more than we would like to see.
But everything else looked good with this vehicle, so it was a really good performer,
Absolutely.
Apart from that minor downgrade for structure.
And that's the story for all of the good performers. It's a more severe test than we used to run, and they're doing pretty well at it. So
Joe, they performed pretty well in the updated side crash test. The updated moderate overlap test was sort of a different story. Before we run through those ratings, can you remind us what's changed for this test? We're now looking at the rear seat, right?
Exactly. So we put a dummy in the rear seat now, and we're evaluating the protection of that occupant. It represents a small female or an adolescent child in the rear seat.
All right, so how did these vehicles perform?
Unfortunately, three earned poor ratings, 1 earned a marginal rating. The trouble with these vehicles is that in all 4 of them, the dummy submarined, which means their pelvis went underneath the seatbelt and the seatbelt went up into the abdomen region.
And we also saw elevated belt forces as well on the chest of the dummy and so forth.
Absolutely, and so when the dummy gets sort of out of position by submarining like that, there's a lot of motion. The belt gets a little high up into the neck. We see high neck forces and also chest risk.
The Tundra managed a marginal rating. The other trucks earned poor ratings. If you want to learn more about those ratings and dig into them a little bit, you can head to IIHS.org to do so. And if you like this sort of content, if you like crash tests, please remember to subscribe to our channel so that you'll never miss another crash test. Joe, thanks for walking us through that.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.